so cool. It's one of the coolest things I have ever done. It is literally the best use for color changing acrylic ever, and I happen to have the perfect color changing acrylic to make Bruni from Frozen 2. He is the little fire spirit. He's like a little salamander. When he is hot and on fire, he's purple. When he is cold, Elsa turns him blue with a little pile of snow, which is just amazing. So we've got the fire that's coming off his back, which glows in the dark, can be removed, and he's purple. Then you dunk him, ironically, in hot water or heat it up, and it turns blue like when Elsa cools him off. It is so amazing. I love this one. It is extreme 3D. He is standing up off the nail. It is just perfect for Bruni. I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So I'm going to begin with a background layer, and I chose an acrylic that is a black base that has a whole bunch of different colors of little glitter in it. And I felt like that was really appropriate because it has some of it that looks kind of like the fiery colors, the oranges, and then there's some cooler tones. And it just sort of reminds me of an autumn ground cover with just different colors, but just kind of some darkness. And I felt it was really appropriate. And now I'm going to encapsulate it with a layer of clear acrylic. Whenever you're using a glitter color, you want to make sure that you cover it up so that the glitter stays nice and protected, like a little sheath over the top of it. That glitter mix is one that is pre-mixed and is on Double Dip's website. I will put the color names in the description box below. This design is not entirely Double Dip. The Bruni base color that is just perfect for him is actually a Le Chat Gelée 3-in-1 powder. I don't have the color name off the top of my head, but that will also be in the description box below. So if you're interested in this color that I'm using now, that is where that one is from. And so it is, like I said, it is a color changing powder. It's thermal, so if it's warm, then it is that light icy blue, and then when it's cool, it looks like the purple. So as I'm working with it, acrylic heats up as it cures, as the chemical reaction between the monomer and the polymer happens, and they're polymerizing and forming the multi-chain oligomers. Whew, lots of words there for you. There is some heat that is produced. So the color of the acrylic as I'm sculpting it will get to be that light blue color versus the darker one, which is funny just to watch as you're sculpting it. And so as you're sculpting it, it'll start out with whatever the cool color is. And we're going to make a base of Bruni. So if you imagine you took a slice of his body down the middle, then this is what you're making. You're making that silhouette, not his head though. Leave his head separate, but just do like neck, torso, tail. And then make 4 little legs separately. And then also you're going to make that slice concept for his head. So we've got the body, and then you can start adding the little legs. And you can see in the middle of his body, it's starting to look a little bit more blue than, say, his tail is. And it'll just progressively get more and more blue as it sets there. So there's the second leg. Definitely look at some reference photos. And when you're looking, especially for a character that you're making off the nail extreme 3D, where you can look at it from any angle, try to find as many reference photos as you can from as many angles as you can. The hard thing with Bruni is because this movie isn't that old. I mean, it's a few years old, but it's not like Beauty and the Beast that has so much time and so much fan art dedicated to it that there aren't nearly as many reference photo options out there. So as you're looking for them, you may have a harder time finding ones that really seem like they are from the angle that you want. So I also recommend watching short video clips. It isn't quite as easy just to glance at when you want to see something quick, but you do get to see it. Now, after we have that base of the body done, we're going to take it off the nail form backing and we're going to start building up one side of it. As you are beginning to build up this character, you're going to want to insert a magnet into his back, right about the middle. You want to be about the middle of the back as far as like down the length and also as close to that center line as you can get it, so that when the magnet grabs onto the fire that's going to be on top of the back, it doesn't look like it's off center. It looks like it's nice and towards the middle. So we're going to try to cover up that magnet best we can. If it does show through, it's okay because there's going to be painting that goes on top of Bruni as well, because he has the little diamond pattern on his back, so it won't necessarily show. But the more it's covered up, the better, because then you don't have to make sure that you hide it, at least not as carefully. Going to build up the thickness of his neck, and after you completely round out one side of his body, set this down, leave it there until it is 100% hardened. You don't want to touch it or move it and feel any heat off of it anymore. You also don't want to have it be where as you're feeling it, it squishes. Now I said you don't want to feel heat off of it. I know it was still bright blue, but to the touch, you couldn't feel the heat from it anymore. So then we're going to do the other side, and it's so funny to be sculpting where you're applying one color to a color and you're trying to just round it out and look like a smooth uniform piece, and it is very split blue to purple. It's just so funny looking to me. And as I was working on it, it's so weird to be making something and have it just change color right before your eyes. And since there's so much acrylic and it's so thick, the color change was very significant on this part, just because there was so much of that chemical reaction happening and so much heat produced that it changed really rapidly. We're going to smooth out the rest of his back, and then you can grab those little legs that you made and you can glue them into place on his body. So I'm going to start with the front legs, and then we're going to be adding the little back leg. So I'm going to do one side, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. Same concept as I said, you want to make sure that before you glue these legs on that there is no temperature coming off of Bruni anymore, and he does not squish. Because if it's any squishy, if there's any squishiness left at all, and you try to hold on to a piece like this with your tweezers will squish it, and it will dent it, and it will make a big mess. So you don't want to rush the process. You want to set this to the side for an adequate amount of time, plus 10 minutes, maybe not that long, but make sure that it's not going to have any issues, so that once you go to do this, you don't have to fix a problem that you could have eliminated just by waiting another minute or two. After the legs are all glued on, then you're going to want to build them up, bulk them out, just like you did with the body. Add acrylic to both the front and the back, blend them into his body, smooth them out. Make it look like this isn't separate pieces. You want this to look like one single creature who grew just like this. Thicken up the very end of his foot, so he's got like a little bulbous area on the end of each leg. And as you're working on and sculpting up all of these pieces, some things like the feet you could actually do later after he's been glued onto the nail, so that you can kind of sculpt them around the nail if you want to. I'm doing it sort of part and part. I'm not sculpting his toes yet. I'm just sculpting the bulk of his foot. But if you wanted to wait and do all of that later, you certainly could. I'm going to add a little bit more of a muscular tone to his shoulders, just a little bit more, so he doesn't look quite so like his legs were not actually part of his body. Add a little bit more to the other side. Kind of do the same thing for his hips. Just keep working on it. Like I said, have reference photos from multiple angles, or in the case where I had a hard time finding reference photos for Bruni from every angle that I wanted, watch some little clips, or even find a GIF that would work to get the different angles of it. And if you pause them and screenshot it, that can sometimes work as well. If you are having trouble finding exactly the image or the angle that you're looking for. Once you are happy though with his legs and the smoothness, then you are going to attach it to the nail prior to adding his head. So put a little bit of nail glue on the end of his feet and then hold that in place. Depending on the curvature of your nail, he may not just set flat. If that's the case like yours is, choose one front foot to have a loft, like he is holding it up, like he's getting kind of a little bit playful and he's gonna pounce or something, and he's got one foot that's ready. And then unfortunately I missed the part recording where I added his head, and I've sculpted all of that. So you're going to glue on his headpiece and then build up all of the height of his head and all of the shape of his head. It is the same type of process that I used for making his body, but it is his head instead. So we've got the little like hills for his eyes, and then his nose coming out. With white acrylic, I'm going to be sculpting his eye, and then with going back to that thermal gelée powder, we're going to be adding his eyelids, going both above and underneath his eyes. And then after you've got those little eyelids in place, you could call the sculpting done, or you can add more to it. You can add a little bit more definition, going from his brow bone down to the bridge of his nose, which I did just a little bit. But if you look at pictures of Bruni and videos of Bruni, he's rather smooth. So you don't need to do really too much to it, and any other details that you add are just like the cherry on top. So it's up to you how far you want to take this. You want to just take it a little farther down the bridge of his nose like I did, or you could even skip that part altogether. It's sort of up to your discretion. But then once you have his face done, you are going to want to go through and add those toes like I mentioned. After you have all of that done, I'm going to start sculpting a base for the fire on a nail form backing. This is using a clear glow-in-the-dark powder. That one is from Double Dip. It is their color called Bodacious. Love that one. The glow is so intense, and it is such a really smooth, beautiful product to sculpt with. So I'm going to do several different sections of flames, and you don't want them all to be the same. I know sometimes with something like flames, you can kind of get into the habit of just sculpting the same type of a shape over and over again. And while that is okay and actually pretty much recommended for flames, they all have kind of like similar type of a shape. You want to just switch it up a little bit. So have some facing different directions, or have that like 2-prong flame and then some that are one, and just make it so that they're not all identical. Then we're going to tightly wrap our Bruni with some aluminum foil, making sure to focus on getting his back up the spine as snug as possible. After that has been wrapped and you've really pressed it in and around everything, I recommend using the side of your fingernail or a brush cover, or even just like a toothpick would work if you could just like press it on. Then you're going to want to grab a magnet and you're going to lay that on top of the aluminum foil so that there is a magnet inside Bruni, the aluminum foil, and then a magnet on top of the foil. So it's got an aluminum foil sandwich between the magnets. grab more of your color Bodacious or whatever your glow-in-the-dark acrylic is, and apply a strip of that going down his back, covering up the magnet that you just inserted into or on top of the foil, so that that new magnet is going to be inside the flames. So this is the base for your flames, and so wherever you put this is where that glow-in-the-dark flame is going to be. If you want it to go all the way down the tail, make sure you sculpt it all the way down the tail. If you want it to go all the way up onto his forehead, make sure you sculpt it all the way up onto his forehead. After you have that base done, you're going to dip those little pieces of acrylic flame that you sculpted on your nail form backing into some nail glue, and then you're going to hold them on to that flame base until it grabs them and it's going to hold them in place. As you are gluing these on, you may find that your flame pieces are a little too small, a little too big, or possibly you simply don't have enough. If that's the case, you may have to adjust them. If they are too big, a nail scissors, a manicure scissors should cut the acrylic quite easily because it is so thin. Obviously, be careful about it. It might crack, but it should be able to take at least some of it down and help that issue if that's the case. After they've all been in place, then you can go through and you can secure them with some more of that color acrylic that is your glow. That one piece on the end, you saw I tried to cut it and just won't cut. Then I decided that piece was unnecessary. If that's the case, you can do that too. That one, at first I thought I'd cut it so it wasn't quite as long, and then I just decided that at the end there really wasn't a need. So we're going to just smooth out all of the transitions from flame to that fire base, and then after they've all been kind of just secured, thickened up slightly so they aren't too fragile, then you can leave that to the side to cure. Once again, you don't want to rush this process. Anytime you have different acrylic layers and there's things that are touching each other or building up, or you're going to have to actually physically grab something to move it, you want to make sure you don't rush the process, because it's just so easy to dent them or smudge them or make something crooked or lopsided. So you want to take your time and allow the acrylic to just run its course. Once it is fully cured, remove the aluminum foil from Bruni and then remove the flames from the aluminum foil. After that's done, check to make sure they fit nice and snug. As long as they do, you can proceed to painting him. With a purple color of just acrylic paint, I'm going to be adding the diamond patterns across Bruni's back. This color may not show up very much against the purple of Bruni when he is cold, but if that's the case, it's okay, because they don't necessarily show up while he's cold, so it works out. But you want to make sure that whatever color purple you choose has a higher contrast when Bruni is in the secondary color, which would be the blue. And if you don't have this specific shade of, or this type of thermal powder, there's a lot of just thermal pigments that you could get, and you could possibly mix your own too, if that would be something that you would be interested in. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to make a little bit of a lighter patch on his chest and his tummy. Now, because when Bruni is purple, it's a lavender tummy, and when he's blue, it's a light blue tummy, I didn't want to use a specific color to make that area. Instead, what I used was diluted white paint. Another option would be like a white jelly gel, so something that wasn't opaque. You want to use something that'll show whatever the underneath color is through. And when you're using acrylic paint for this, you want it to look slightly more intense than you want the color to be at the end. So if it looks a little bit too white, that's actually a good thing, because once you apply a top coat over the top of that semi-transparent white acrylic paint, the underneath color, whether it be blue or purple, at whatever time, will show through with a little bit more intensity. So if it looks a little bit extra light at the moment, that's not an issue whatsoever. So add as much of that tummy space as you can get to. After that's done, you are going to need to add those final details to Bruni's face, like his nostrils, any outlines that you feel are necessary, as well as his eye color. So I'm going to start with some black paint that is also slightly diluted, and I'm going to be adding any little outlines that I feel are necessary. One that I do really think you need to add, especially if you didn't sculpt it in, is the definition of his mouth. So the top of his mouth to the bottom of his mouth, or his lips. I did not sculpt in that area. I figured that I would sort of find it as I went with that white tummy, and that is the case. So then, just to make sure it really does show up as being two separate areas of his body, just add that little black outline and it'll really pop. Add some outlines around his eyes to make them stand out. When in my particular color combination that I have, when Bruni is in the cool coloring, when he's the purple, I felt like his eyes didn't quite show up as vividly as I wanted, which is why I really did that really intense black outline around his eyes, just to make them show up a little bit better. With a light blue, I'm going to be adding his iris. And when you're painting a character like this and you have to paint in the iris, do that before you're right at the end. I usually like to save eye details for the very last thing that I do, just because it's a finishing touch and it's sort of a sense of accomplishment to do those eyes and just get them done. And it makes the whole thing look so much more complete after you add the eyes, that it's just as a nice last thing. But when they have a large space that is the iris, like in the case with Bruni, it takes a little bit to dry. So do the iris and then do some outlining or some shading like I did around Bruni's feet, and then come back to add the pupil. So with black acrylic paint, I'm going to be adding that nice little circular pupil right in the middle of Bruni's eyes. Bruni doesn't necessarily have eyes that are completely facing the same direction, so he can be a little cross-eyed if you would like. I'm going to add a bit of a blue detail around the outside of the iris just to add a bit more definition. The characters in the Frozen movies are so well developed that there is so much detail and really subtle color changes and differences, especially in things like their eyes, that weren't present in older films. So as much as you can add of that, the better. And then apply some gel sealer over the background, make that glitter really, really shine. And then you can go ahead and you can top coat Bruni. I am going to be using a matte top coat for him that is not a gel product. It is just a regular lacquer top coat that will not affect the way that the magnets work, whereas a gel top coat adds a little bit of thickness and could make it so the magnets aren't quite as strong. Going back to my flames, I'm going to use a semi-sheer color of really bright pink gel polish, and I'm going to be adding that little pink glow to the tips of the flames. Make sure you do both sides of the flames. If you just do one, even though it will show through, it'll look a little foggy on the side that does not actually have the gel. After that's been cured, you can apply some gel sealer over your flames as well, and then cure it again. And then after all that's been done, you can play with this, and that is the fun part. You can admire your Bruni when he is on fire, take those flames off, dunk him in cold water, and it's just like Elsa gave him a patch of snow. It is so cool and so cute and really just so much fun to look at and play with, and it is so satisfying when a design actually just works out this well. I was absolutely stunned with how perfect that acrylic color was. It's been sitting on my shelf for years, and it never even occurred to me to do it with this. Here's what those flames look like when they are in the dark. I hope you guys are as excited about this one as I am. I would love to see any recreations, and I will see you all next time. Bye!